gosh, I was on a call back in October with a large group nationally, and one of the guys on that group who is well known in the unified communication space said that the UC market in and of itself literally leapt forward about 5 years in just 7 months. So you're seeing an adoption rate that's just skyrocketed. But what happened, I think, with the pandemic is you had a lot of companies that they just kind of band-aided things, right? And they sent people to work from home with maybe a Zoom license or Teams.
Right.
They might have been forwarding cell phones or forwarding your desk phone to your cell phone. And that may work in the short interim, but we were also supposed to be, 15 days to flatten the curve, which turned into, over a year now. So here we are, we're at this precipice of what do we do? Do we go back to normal, or do we, look at a more cohesive solution? And I think the latter is where a lot of companies are today. So they're trying to figure out, how do I make this pivot? How do I, look at a business continuity and a disaster recovery solution that is going to cover me if this happens again, or if this goes on for an extended period.
We saw a big uptick, obviously, when people were forced to send their remote workforce from home, right? And so we saw a lot of opportunities come through in that time frame. And then, the pressure was solved to a certain extent. People got their options sorted out. But what it opened up the door for is the possibilities for those folks that had to scramble together to put together a solution, right? Whether that was deploying phones that they didn't intend to do, or doing it in a different way that they wouldn't be able to ideally sort those things out. Like my brother, for example, works for an investment brokerage firm, and the requirement for a recorded line for them is a key component, right? And so they were able to scramble and put something together to accomplish the task, but was not an ideal solution, right? And as this is extended, and as we've all been, quarantined and working from home for an extended period of time, it's opened up the doors for those possibilities to have a conversation with the customers who don't have an ideal solution anyways, right? They have got something in place, but they don't feel is scalable, something that they can accomplish and get, what they wanted to see. So we've seen a lot of, follow through opportunities trickle through over time as people, the initial need was solved, but the scalability for the long-term play has been some of the challenge. And that's, those are the opportunities, and those are the types of folks that we're seeing a lot of that conversation come into right now. And quite frankly, there's tremendous, it's been, as much of a negative thing as, social distancing, missing Christmas with your family and all the other crap that we've all been through, right? It's been a tremendous opportunity for our particular vertical, right? As far as the technology that we can bring to the environment, because the cloud possibilities have opened up lots of doors around those different types of things. So that's some thoughts I've had around that topic.
So what is it that you think that makes some of these other verticals adopt the VoIP or cloud communications quicker? Is it maybe having some foresight, not to say this kind of disaster in timing, right? But what is it, maybe they did something in their infrastructure sooner, or what do you think is it that helped them adopt VoIP or cloud communications quicker?
Well, I think a distributed customer, someone who has lots of different locations, lots of different physical folks, those have been the ones that have been, I would say, kind of the low-hanging fruit for our industry prior to this. And so we've seen a lot of adoption in those types of things because it scales nicely, right? If I have a retail example, for example, if five phones in a shop, but I have 500 shops, cloud's a really good fit for that, right?
Right.
If I have the opposite of that and I have 5,000 phones in one physical location, cloud, has an economy challenge for those different types of things, right? So what's been interesting is, those 5,000 employees that used to be at one location are now at 5,000 individual home locations, right? Working from home. And that is an interesting dynamic that's kind of opened up the door for those types of things. But those, I would say, those are the folks that jumped on the bandwagon first, that were more distributed. That's an easier scenario right off the bat.
I guess there's a few things that we could look at. I mean, there's, like Tyler mentioned, retail. There's still a lot of companies out there today that are tied to this premise-based PBX, and they don't know how to get from point A to point B. And sometimes maybe deploying SIP trunks might be the cheaper or the kind of slower adoption rate to the cloud, where we can take and SIP trunk to that PBX and then take all the intelligence and move the intelligence to the cloud and do all the routing from there. Mm-hmm. That's certainly a solution, and it's a possibility. But with the economy of where it's at right now with hosted VoIP and cloud communications, the cost of entry has really come down quite a bit. And so I really would challenge, customers to take a hard look at their, costs that they're spending today, not just on, the PBX itself, but what are you spending on maintenance? Do you have like Cisco SmartNet and things of that nature that are built into there? Because those kind of costs go away if you move to a cloud solution. So you've got to take all the costs into consideration, and then you got to plan well. I tell everybody that that you need to look very closely at what each of your department heads really want to get out of the solution. Interview your IT team, but also interview your CMO, your CFO, and your CIO, because they all want a different outcome from the solution. In our world, I mean, we typically go in on the front end, right? And we're sitting down with a customer and saying, okay, how do we get from point A to point B, and help develop that solution? And security is always something that comes up. It's always a discussion that we have to have. And a lot of customers are scared now, if they've got, say, a small call center, you've got 50 agents, and now those 50 agents are working at home and they're taking credit card payments. So like Tyler mentioned, PCI for the payment card industry, is that going to be secured in the context of that home-based agent? So we have to look at that. We have to, say, okay, what kind of computer are they going to be working on? How do we, encrypt not just the voice, but also the data that's going to traverse that connection? And so it's a challenge. It's something that we definitely have to tackle. But it's always going to be a very tailored solution based on the needs of the customer, because every different customer that we work with has a different security posture. Some of them want to have a real tight hold on it. And I've worked with some customers that don't want even outside applications. They want to literally, their IT teams want to build those applications. So they won't use, like a agent on the desktop. They'll run it themselves and do all the reporting in-house. But that's really dependent upon the customer. But it's definitely a conversation that has to happen every time, and it's going to come up.
Thanks, guys. Short answer sounds like yes, there is, but it based on case by case will determine whether or not it's applicable to your specific business, right?
Yep.
That's good. So on the topic of just applications, and especially like you mentioned a little earlier, both of you guys, kind of like just the home applications that people have adopted much sooner, like the Zooms or like the Microsoft Teams. To you, Derek, do you see it as a complement, specifically talking about like Teams? Do you see it as a complement to the cloud-based unified communication solution, or is it like more of a competitor?
So I know Teams has dumped a lot of money and a lot of marketing into their product, and they promote it a lot as a communication system. From my world, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and coming from one of the large, global manufacturers of PBXs, if you are used to hitting a call tree and being able to get to the right person based on call prompts, then Teams is not your answer. It's not a phone system. It's great for collaboration. And, there's companies out there like Vonage that do that direct connect to Teams. And Tyler, you could probably elaborate on this, but I believe that, Vonage, if you've got an agent working inside of Salesforce, let's say, you could have the call control be when I click on that call control, the back end is routed through Vonage, but the agent can stay inside of Salesforce the entire time. So that's where teams can kind of collaborate. And then when you need to have these kind of video calls and collaboration calls, it's great, but it's not a phone system. Well, it can be. And I'll reiterate, just the fact that the economy of scale and the entry point into getting into hosted VoIP has really come down a lot. So I think it's less of a need. But SIP trunks, yeah. I mean, if you're running a big contact center and you need to run SIP, it could be a good solution. But for the most part, if we're talking about a distributed office, like Tyler was mentioning, if you've got a distributed Salesforce that's working from home, or just typical everyday office workers, your accounting folks and all that are working from home, it's probably going to be just as economical to move to a true cloud solution. And like you were alluding to, I mean, one of the benefits is this whole business continuity and disaster recovery, and you're seeing it firsthand, like with what Tyler's having to deal with a outage. When in a traditional PBX, if I've got my PBX forwarded to my cell phone and I'm working from home, and power goes out at that headquarters, well, my calls aren't going to flow to my cell phone. It just isn't going to happen. And when the intelligence is in the cloud, we can route those calls anywhere. So if we're routing them to a cell phone, to a mobile app, I could answer it on my iPad. I could flip open a computer and be on a hotspot. I mean, it doesn't matter. I can always get that call. And that's what a lot of customers have to look at, is the soft cost, because we talk about, we go through the ROI of moving to the cloud. We're always looking at those hard costs, but the soft costs can be huge.
I think the efficiencies that we can gain from being able to be, nimble in the instance, right? Scalable, opens up the doors from a cloud options, to provide people also the capability of interconnecting the stuff that they care about, right? So they can interconnect, the other applications, they can interconnect their contact center solutions, they can bring in additional digital channels, right? With SMS, with group texting, with video conferencing. It allows them and gives them the possibility, right? My background has been selling premise phone systems, right? I did a lot of Cisco systems back in the day. And, anytime we'd want to turn on contact center, right? The large end contact center solution, it's $1 million, right? It's $1 million. We're going to start with $1 million and work our way down, right? But, a cloud solution like what we can bring to the table is if the customer has a need, right? And they need all the bells and whistles for our biggest flagship option, I can turn it on for 5 people, right? And, while that might be expensive, a little bit expensive from an implementation perspective, because the implementation is going to be a similar cost between 5 agents or 500 agents, I can still do those types of things. I can turn on the right size, I can scale, and I can take advantage of those applications, and I can turn something on like a video conferencing function for 5 users or for 10 users or for a subset of my folks, without the insanity of having to go buy a whole bunch of infrastructure, manage it, turn it all on, buy SIP trunks for it, buy hosting places for it. The nightmare just continues when you think about trying to do some of those things yourself. So I think it allows customers to be nimble and to add different components to their environment, and it's an exciting time to be working in this cloud communication space, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a great takeaway too, to that point, because it does seem as if the ability to be mobile, and by the definition of mobile, might be different. Mobile might be desktop mobile versus Chromebook mobile, right? There's two different types of functionality when we're talking about implementing these things. So for lack of better terms, it's like a la carte type of option, while the implementation might be initial to the same cost. The ability to be flexible on the fly based on scaling needs, functionality needs, this will be what helps them determine what to kind of flip the switch on with you guys, right? So that's very interesting. And so why do you think that is, ultimately, that these options end up making the most sense in the efficiency of the business?
Well, I think it just takes the capability that people need to right size what they've got going on, right? So we've got customers, from the small micro segment, 10 users, right? We can light up a 10 user shop tomorrow, right? You send in the order, they can self-serve and buy it right off of our website and be provisioned kind of instantaneously. To the more enterprise type customer that needs a lot of planning, and they have 20 call flows and 1,000 EIDs and some complexity to that environment. And so the technology that we have allows us to be nimble to respond to those needs from the customer's perspective. So there are certainly customers that aren't fits for us, right? I've certainly talked to customers that we say, this probably, based on all the things you've got going on, this isn't the great fit, but that's few and far between, right? I feel like, we can be a lot of things for most people, not everything for everybody, but a lot of things for most people. And so that's the conversation that we want to get into is get that with your customers to determine what's happening in their environment and how we can potentially help.
Well, like I said, I've been in the industry for 20 years, so I've seen it change quite a bit. Tyler was talking about some, different sectors that maybe, or different vertical markets that, their solution doesn't work well. I remember years ago walking a manufacturing facility that was literally like 4 football fields long on the inside and heavy machinery running and everything. They had to have strobe lights go off, for if a call was coming in so that they knew that the phone was ringing. So different things like that, where you would go, wow, I just can't see a cloud solution there. And today, now that's becoming possible with the speeds that we can push over wireless, and the fact that, we've got all these endpoints that work on a wireless connection. So it's really changed quite a bit. And I just tell anybody that is trying to make this pivot today, just plan well. Sit down with your IT team, sit down with all your business head units, and just try to figure out what they want to get out of the solution. Because your chief marketing officer is interested in data and analytics so that he can, figure out the KPIs that he's gonna have to measure for the company. Your CFO wants to save money. Your CIO wants the biggest and the best, right? So everybody wants a different outcome, but you may have a lot of that expertise just sitting in your IT department if some of these guys have deployed VoIP solutions or not. But if they haven't, get some outside counsel. That's what we do. We come in and audit customers from top to bottom, and try to figure out what they're spending today, and then write up a scope of work and how to get from point A to point B, and then walk them through that minefield. And that even includes the legal contractual, things that, that they may not know about. So definitely get some help. If it's not somebody like VocalPoint, there's tons of great consultants out there, but definitely plan well.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. And then for you, Tyler, if you can give us like a 10,000 foot view of a little bit of your background, as well as maybe some final thoughts from today.
Sure. So, I came from the IPPBX space, right? But it was premise based, right? Cisco was the strong scenario, did a bunch of stuff in that environment. What I get passionate about and excited about when we talk to the customers is oftentimes they'll come and say, we have this, right? Build us this. And like, all right, typically we're like, yeah, we can do all that good stuff. Happy to do it. Table stakes. That's not that interesting nor exciting. But if you need let's talk about what can we do? What can we do to change the way that you interact? What digital channels can we open up? How can we add video to your environment? How can we transform your communications to become more efficient, more, and bring some environment, some cool things to your environment? So that's part of the conversations that I really enjoy having, right? And it's really easy to get through a discovery with a customer and say, I have this, and this, and we say, great, we can do all that stuff. But let's talk about, maybe what couldn't you do in your existing system today that we can open up the doors. That's where I think, we can gain some credibility. We can make the customer feel like we're on their side. And really change what they're trying to do, because that's the outcome we're looking for, right? We're selling phone systems and selling seats, great, happy to do it. Not that cool though, right? It's changing the outcome of what the customer's doing. That's the cool part about it. So that's kind of my last commentary around those things.
I appreciate that. And it's about business is personal, man. It's about people, right? At the end of the day, the solutions are there, the technologies are there, the leadership could be there. It's a matter of implementation of all of these and then successfully having partnerships with business partners like yourself or like you, Derek. So thank you for that, guys. Tyler, would you mind offering an email address if somebody wanted to contact you directly? How would they get a hold of you? Yeah,
it's easy. tyler.smith@vonage.com. That's probably the fastest way. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well. Happy to get into the conversation with you guys as you have opportunities to come through or things you want to talk about. We can talk through the specifics of what we can bring to the environment. And I appreciate you letting me join this thing. And I apologize for my scenario, but we worked our way through and we struggled. We proved that cloud communications and cloud platforms will work regardless of the situation.
Yeah, that's right. This is effective communications with remote teams, right? This is perfect.
That's right.
We're staying nimble here, especially in today's world where it seems like all of us have made a home out of our home office and finding ways to help kind of stay, again, on the fly and still to the point. So thank you for being flexible that way, man. And then for you, Derek, what would be the best way to get in contact with you directly?
You can always look me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on social media in that regard. And also, if you want to email me, it's just Derek, DEREK, @VocalPointConsulting.com. And one of the things you mentioned, Joey, and I'll hit on that, is you said something about implementation, which we didn't really talk a lot about, because a lot of VoIP providers can do a lot of the same things, but so much of it depends upon how well it's implemented and how well the people are trained. Because if you don't have good implementation and good training, you're not going to have a good adoption rate within your company of those applications. So definitely look for a company that's going to do those two things very well.